So, I would like to say that my Guilders 2 beta experience was interesting. First, I just want to get the biggest point out of the way. I think the whole expansion should be delayed, given on how the beta was rolled out. I'm not really too sure how you can have a beta release and then need to roll it back and still claim that it will be ready on time. The new specs are normally the selling point of a new expansion, and if they're in a state where they wasn't even tested on a live server environment, I believe that speaks volumes to the overall state of the expansion as a whole. So now, let's get into the classes, the new specs in general. I, I mainly played the Luminary. The Luminary is the one I played the most due to being an unwilling Guardian main. I really like the Luminary in a support role. I believe this is the role that will be filling in most game modes due to the fact that the DPS version isn't as good as Willbinder. So unless they nerf Willbinder before the expansion launch or shortly after, I just don't believe it'll be a DPS mostly. I believe even in PvE it won't be because the Willbinder version of like the like DPS role is gonna be doing more DPS than Luminary. But the Luminary will be easier to play, so maybe it will see some play because of that fact. But in PvP, which is where most of my experience is, just in general, the class, the damage skills are too easy to dodge. Like the 2 button, it does good damage in the Shroud, but it's got a 1.5 second like round up to do its big damage. So it's just too slow. You might see it in 1v1 dueling builds, because the 5 and the Shroud gives it a lot of sustain. So we'll see. It might have 1v1 dueling builds, but it won't be like the hard carry that Willbinder was in the past. Now, the new Revenant specialization can do it. It's really bad. Didn't like it. I I still believe that it will not be a power DPS. It's even after seeing it, it will be a candy build. I really don't see how it could be a power build. I saw some people playing it as power. They seem to do decent with it, but overall, I think candy will just be better with this build. My inability to play the condition Revenant does not mean that it was bad. I just believe that it's not as fun to play either as like Vindicator was. So kind of really needs to go back, I think, and maybe look at how to make it more interesting to play. So that's all I have to say about the conduit. The Paragon is one of the ones I believe is actually interesting. I assumed it was going to be really bad, but it seems like it'll be more useful than I believe. Now, once again, unfortunately, in a support role, but I do believe that the 1v1 AF node, like the 1v1 dual lords on the AF nodes, will be super good as well. But mainly, I do believe Paragon will be a support role. It seems super strong in this, even in season and SPVP. So we'll have to see how that works. Now, the engineer, the amalgam, or however you want to say it, in the beta, this class was insane. It was dominating, doing crazy amounts of damage, had crazy amounts of sustain. But if you take away the numbers, I actually believe that this class isn't doing anything groundbreaking, as people assumed it was. Because due to the recent nerfs and some of the other things like barrier generation in general, I don't believe this class is doing. The numbers are crazy, but the class isn't crazy. So if they nerfed its numbers, I believe that this class would actually be fine. It would just be a normal engineer class. But if they released it in the beta state, this class would be played by all the tryhards trying to win matches. This class was insane to fight against. It was super good. Now, on to the next one. The Gelsat, which is the Ranger one. I really liked playing the Gelsat, but the problem with Gelsat is that it was way too squishy for like what it was. It didn't have enough passive sustain built into the class like Soul Beast, and even Soul Beast doesn't have that much. But Untamed has way more than it does. And Gelsat was fun to play though. It did good damage. I don't believe it sustains to be, hey, I got super speed, let's run away. Because it just doesn't really work. But it was fun to play. I did like its build. I think it's way better than Blade Sword going into the sword skill. The bow just works way better than it. It's functions. It's played smoothly. Now the new Thief one, the Antiquarian. In the beta, it was super weird. It was bad. With that being said, though, I actually think this class has really good potential to be a high damaging class. The only reason I think we didn't see it in the beta was due to the fact that it's got a lot going on. It's got way more going on than any of the other past Thief builds. So I believe that this will take some time to get used to and play, but I believe the percentages are there. Like the numbers should be there to make this a big power DPS class for in PvP. In PvE, I don't. I was probably already doing pretty good. I didn't play any PvE with it. Obviously, I don't play a lot of PvE, but I do think that in PvP this will be good. It will just need the thief players will have to cook with it for a little bit. It's super weird. It's a weird class to play, but the numbers theoretically are there to make it a super strong power damage class. Now on to the next one, the Evoker. As I expected, of course it was a super good support class in World World. The only real downside is it doesn't generate a lot of boons as some of the other other specializations for elementalists do. But the raw numbers of it is really, really good. And you can always cover boons with other classes. So I think in World World, particularly, this class will see play as a support role. Now, the DPS versions of it seem to be lacking, definitely compared to how Catalyst is right now. But I mean, that's like a whole different thing, you know. But I do believe that the DPS versions probably are gonna be okay, at least in 1v1 scenarios. It won't be good for like big world v world fights, but it should be have the potential in SPVP to be able to do 1v1s. But whenever went into them, they just kind of fell over and died. It might be because the difficulty of Evoker is a little bit higher. Having the manners that pay is something that people that play Elementals don't typically do. So it's got a little bit of a learning curve to it. So maybe that's why. But it could also be lacking people picking the liking into one elemental, like one elemental spec. That may be more of a detriment than a help, even with the removal of cooldowns. So that may be something that will have to be looked at, just to see how that actually functions, like once it comes live. But Evoker seemed fine. It wasn't groundbreaking. It just did good damage, good healing numbers in World v World. But other than that, it seemed fine. Now, Traplador, the new element, the new Mesmer, my bad, the new Mesmer spec. I actually don't think it changed how Mesmer played a lot. Not having clones really doesn't really change how the class plays, because the clones spawn up and you immediately use them on one of your saddles. They rarely, even in World v World, you're saddling and then giving boons to people like pretty consistently. So the Traplador doesn't really change much, and I think definitely in SPVP for sure. I think the value that Traplador brings is like negligible. You would have had more value just playing one of the other Mesmer specs. Definitely with how Mesmer's one-shot potential is super high right now. So unless they was to nerf that, I don't believe that this spec will see a lot of play. And definitely in season PvP, in the tournaments or any of that stuff, I just don't believe it'll be. We won't be seeing it. It won't be super used. Because even in World v World, I didn't see it giving much more boons. I'm like, Chronologist or Chronomancer, it's just so good for like stability. I just don't see how it can't really compete with that. So they'll have to do. It probably needs more supportive skills. Now, The last elite specialization, the ritualist. Now, the ritualist is the one class, well, one spec that I think would be able to do every single role fairly decent. It seemed to have a good support role. The power DPS version of it seemed to be a little lacking, but it wasn't anything that was like too much, like too little. It was still there. It just wasn't as good as like Reaper was, which is what some people was expecting. But I mean, Reaper was a powerhouse, so I'm not too sure what they was expecting there. And it probably wasn't as good as like a Hab in a 1v1 scenario. But once again, Hab is super good, so I'm not sure what they were expecting there. So without some nerfs to some of the other stuff, but it doesn't really need it because Wizardless was good. It was a good class to fight, like to play and to go up against. Um, the only thing that I really have to say about it is the clones, well not the clones, but the shades. They're a little clunky. They're a little weird. Uh, they probably should work on them a little bit more. Other than that, it's fine. It was. It seemed like maybe they could give the power version of it a little bit of a numbers pass, change some of the numbers on it. But other than that, it seemed good. I think Ritualist, it wasn't groundbreaking once again, but it's good. So that's my thoughts on the new expansion specializations. I do not believe that any of these specs will be groundbreaking. They won't shake up the metas. They won't change how the game is fundamentally played, like some of the ones have did in the past, which is unfortunate. But every expansion can't change the meta hugely. But it is unfortunate that this new one won't be doing that due to I think the current state of the meta and definitely in World v World needs to be changed. And I would like to see meta changes even in the other game modes, but it seems like we won't be seeing that. It's just going to be more of the same, a little bit more boons, some more support, and even the DPS versions of these classes aren't. They're not doing anything that isn't unexpected. They're not shaking up the ground. They're not breaking the game in any way, shape, or form, which is unfortunate to see, but it is something that just happens sometimes. So hopefully they do some numbers tuning whenever this expansion comes out, and we'll see this expand some of the classes that were overperforming get brought in line, or maybe just tune up. I don't know. They probably don't need to tune up the new ones, but maybe just bring them in line with some of the more performing stuff. Because Amalgam was definitely the outlier in this beta experience. All the other ones seemed okay. They seemed fine, but the engineer was just doing so much. It was insane. It was super good. Um, yeah, I do think that this expansion needs to be delayed. Um, I can't imagine the expansion as a whole being in a in a better shape than the elite specializations was. I would have to imagine that it's in a worse state. So I would, if I was ArenaNet, I would be delaying the expansion. But I'm assuming there is probably a reason why we haven't gotten an announcement saying that they're delaying it yet. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on the beta experience as a whole. I do hope that you guys enjoyed the video, and thank you for listening.